We are. It's nighttime. Let's talk. Happy Friday, everyone. 0 people so far. That's fine. I'm assuming everyone is having a great Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. It is the celebration of love in the United States, mostly. I don't know if anyone here watches who is not from the United States, but I'm going to try to do something really quick. Okay, hold on. Let me think. I'm a little bit slow to the prep today for various reasons, but I have something I wanted to share, which is basically an approach to dating. What's it like to date as a person with a disability, specifically with as a man, I guess specifically, and then specifically even within that, as a man with a brachial plexus injury or some sort of arm or limb difference. And what I want to show today is a list of dates that I've been on, and I'll get into why if you just give me a sec. Okay. I just need to I just want to try to protect the innocent here as much as possible. Okay. Fine, this works. Okay. Okay, what I'm going to show is... Okay, all right. Let me close out of this. Okay, so what's it been like? Well, okay. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, so I have some thoughts prepared that I want to share. But I think the first thing that I wanted to kind of frame any kind of conversation that I'm having around this is by focusing on the goal. Excuse me. Like, if we have an idea that there's a purpose or there's a goal or there's an end, in other words, in a more like philosophical term, right? So there's an end. There's a kind of... if you're on an arrow, it's the arrow's path. It's like the goal, where that arrow is going. I don't know if I need to keep explaining that, but yeah, basically, if we have the sense that there is a goal, there's an end of dating, I think a lot of this will make sense. And I'll just preface it by saying this: if anything I say about this end of dating does not resonate with you, and you do not think this applies to you, I would submit that a lot of everything else of what I'm going to say is not going to make any sense to you. And so in a way, in a like a very real way, you might as well just kind of stop listening at that point. And I mean this no kind of ill will or anything. It's just honestly, like, that's how important I think this goal is, this end. If we can't kind of agree on what the purpose is of dating, then we're not going to agree on a lot of the other things that have to do with it, I think. And this goes for beyond just someone with a disability or anything like that, right? So let me think. Yeah. So okay, we've got this goal. What's this goal? I think the goal of dating is to find a compatible partner, a compatible match. A partner for what? Specifically for marriage, but I think we'll kind of sidestep that conversation a little bit. But what we're trying to do is we're searching for a particular kind of person that we want to choose, who loves us and who we love. I mean, I think that's one proximate goal. Um, it's not the ultimate goal. I mean, you can kind of keep going. Excuse me. But I do think that's an important part. That's an important part of it. We're trying to discern or kind of decide to um, carefully decide, I think you would say, about whether this person is a good fit for me. If I'm a good fit for them, if we're going to be happy if this works. There's a lot that goes into it. But essentially, it's to kind of figure out if this is someone I want to be with on a more permanent or more committed way. That's how I approach dating. That's what I've approached dating for a long time. Now, I think uh, there's an even more proximate goal here. Also, what's the purpose of dating? It's a purpose. The purpose is to get to know someone. So, how can I decide if someone is right for me, or if I'm right for them, if I haven't even got to know them? Okay, first 2 points. What are the ends to marriage or commitment ultimately, um, and all that entails? And then B, well, I have to get to know someone before I can make that commitment or make that discernment or make that decision. And this is sort of why you kind of go back to the ancient practices of like arranged marriages and stuff like that. Um, because I think the wisdom of that, if there is any, which I think there is that this is someone who is compatible, is going to kind of match your worldview and your life and everything that you care about and you value and your ideals and what your goal is as a person, independent of relationship. And then B, you're going to have a social network that's built in here to ensure that you kind of actually know who the reality of this person, this other human being is. So I think those are two important things to keep in mind. Okay. So, um, how do I put this? So, to that end, I think one thing that the one way that I've approached things over the last few years is by thinking about this as a numbers game, right? There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people that I could get to know. There's a lot of people who I would potentially get along with and they would like me and I like them. But what we want to do is um, have that eye towards the permanence, right? So you're not going to, I guess it's like it's a little bit of a sales model towards the, which I think is a little bit problematic, right? Because I think love is really a gift and it's not something that's earned. I think that's a crucial point too, that I think I've struggled with personally. And I think a lot of people who, maybe men and maybe people in the disabled community in general at large might kind of struggle with too. That's kind of that love is a kind of a reward for something, and not necessarily a gift. And it is a gift. It is a gift from someone else. And ultimately, I think the creator too, God. But anyways, so long story short, where am I trying to get? Where am I trying to get here? I was with roommates who we were all trying to find someone. We're trying to get to know someone. We're trying to meet someone, get married eventually, have that goal, that ideal of love in our life. And we were having a lot of problems. I was living in Chicago at the time. We knew a lot of people, but we were just having a lot of trouble getting dates and so on and so forth. Um, and so I thought about things in a little bit of a different light. I tried to kind of frame it a little bit more as a game, like what would and kind of posing this experiment, this kind of mind experiment to myself. What would it look like if this process was fun and enjoyable and not something that kind of dragged on us and made us unhappy and stressed us out a bunch? And I think one way of thinking about it was like a little bit of a game, a little bit of a competition. So I mean, one thought that came to my mind, and by no means is this the perfect thought, I think, right? But one thing we ended up trying was keeping a list. So it was kind of a score. So you could get on the board if you went on a date with a girl, and date meaning spending time with them one on one, calling it a date, using the magic word date. And it is something that uh, a magic word date. The magic word means that it's a date. Or if this was someone who's long distance, it was a phone call that was lasting more than an hour or so. And that would kind of qualify as a date. So the three of us, like the three of us all kind of put our names on a shared list, a shared note, And then we like started putting names, added names to the list. And um, we started adding names to the list, and this is kind of where I ended up. Um, and so what you see here is a list of, um, I mean, this is kind of anonymized. Hopefully this is anonymous enough, but basically it's broken up by year. And this is like basically the last couple years of my efforts in this towards this end. So 2022, you can see there was 17 girls. 2023 there was 10. 2024, this was a big year for me. This was 22. There's a couple you might not consider. And then 2025 is 2 so far. By the way, things are going very well with this young lady at the end, so keep that in mind. That's just something to keep note. But as you can see, I mean, I don't know how many women this is over the last couple of years. Let's see, 17 plus 10 plus 22 plus 2. Yeah, it's 51 girls in, whatever, 3 years. So, I'll just pause, I think. You can ask whether this was a success or not. Um, did it make it more enjoyable? I would say so, actually. It did make it more enjoyable, because I was doing it with from friends, some guys that I feel very connected to, who I want them to get on the board. I want them to score. I want them to kind of get as many as they can, and then I'm motivated to. And then I think even just for the sake of the friendship and the connection with some of these guys who kind of felt like we were in the trenches trying to battle a tough situation, which is dating in the modern world. Um, I think this was a strategy that helped. I think in general. One potential downside that I think did happen, the jury's still out on whether it was like super detrimental or not, was that there were times that I like didn't know if I wanted to go on a date with someone, and I kind of like defaulted to like, well, I'll just do it anyways. Which, as I kind of speak aloud, is like a good thing. I think more people need to have that kind of mentality of I'm not sure. Like just because you're not like head over heels, like obsessed with someone from the first moment that you meet them, doesn't mean that you need to like not give them a chance for a date or two, maybe three. I don't know. There was a couple girls here that kind of did that. Couple, and many of these rejected me, I would say. But I think there was also a fair amount that I kind of ended things with as well. Maybe maybe not quite 50-50, but mostly being rejected. And I think that's another fruitful thing that comes out of this, right? The more you're kind of able to see each of these rejections as a step forward, the more I think at peace you can be with the whole process. Um, yeah. Okay. Anyways, I'll pause there. Let me collect myself with something. I need to. Oops. Someone texted me. I need to respond to them. Okay. So, okay. For the record, I think of the 3 or 4 guys, one of them got married. If we're just going to kind of look at results of how this worked out, right? There's 4 of us total. One got married. One is engaged currently, and me am dating someone fairly seriously, I would say. So, has this approach borne fruit? Yes, I think so. Um, I think in general, it's gone. I think it's gone well. So, um, yeah. I mean, it's painful. The whole thing is painful. There's no way around the fact that going out with 52 girls in the space of a couple years. And by the way, most of these are like one-off dates, like coffee dates and things like that, very casual, like nothing crazy. I think I'll get into some of the relationships and kind of give you my perspective on some of these. But yeah, like these were all like very wholesome interactions, I would say. Long story short, like nothing here is something that I'm like ashamed of or like think that any of these girls have anything to shame. They're all very nice people. Um, I have really like nothing but good things to say about them. Um, so okay, let's look at two notable occasions, and I think what I've learned. I want to look at the two girls who became my girlfriend. Two GFs. Let's see, both J names, or are they? I don't know. Um, yeah. So let's see. Let's take this one first. J number one, very nice girl. I'll just pause it. I'll just exit this. Very nice young lady. Um, okay, sorry. Hold on. Before I get into that, let me talk about. I want to talk about these things in the context of a couple things that I have learned recently. I was listening to a friend of mine who's a marriage counselor, therapist. He has a podcast, and he was giving a kind of a basic rundown of um, his advice for people that are dating, people that are looking for a spouse, looking for this marriage, looking for that again to kind of keep that goal in mind, that commitment, that relationship in mind, right? And so I guess you can say this title this sort of like having a intentional dimension or intentional um, approach, I guess, right? Um, so again, I think one point that he made was very helpful was again highlighting this fact that love is a gift and not a reward. Okay, so when we get jealous about um, being on Valentine's Day and seeing all kinds of social media posts and people doing all these kind of cute things together, okay, like I think that might be kind of tapping into the dimension of having a relationship as being kind of like an object. I want to acquire a girlfriend. I want to acquire this thing or that thing, a new car or a suit or a job, as if it's some sort of possession. But I think this flips it on the head right away, right? The commitment and the bond and the relationship is not a thing. It's not a reward for being good. It's not like a diploma for graduating some sort of spiritual test. This is a gift. It's free, and gifts are free. And so ultimately, I think a lot of what comes down to is someone's decisions, like their free choices, right? Um, so I think I want to kind of filter this by two things. There's the kind of the things for link. I think the two big buckets, I should say, that my friend talked about this stuff in terms of one is what are you looking for, and then B, what are your red flags? I mean, they're nothing super complicated here, right? Um, I'll talk about what you're looking for first. Um, in essence, his kind of title, his headline for that bucket was basically someone who knows how to love. You want to find someone who knows how to love. And what does that mean? Well, I think what he does is he goes back to C.S. Lewis and some who goes back to even further to ancient Greece, should say, um, the ancient Greek philosophers who categorized love between people in four different buckets. There was agape, eros, philia, and storge. And I don't have enough time to kind of go into detail about what each of these are, but each of these kind of capture a dimension of love, and I'll just quickly go through them. Agape is like selflessness. It's like being able to sacrifice the you for us, or the me for us, or you. Eros is kind of the infatuation or the kind of obsession, physical desire, things like that. Storge is kind of tenderness or kindness or like sweetness, warmth. And then philia is like friendship, common interests, safety. We have interesting conversations together, right? And you need, his point here was you need to have, when you're looking at someone, I need to look at someone and say, this person has all four of these things in a very high degree, 80% or higher. Okay, boom. First bucket done. Red flags. Things that he said, like you should run if you see. Um, okay, I'll just run through them again. He wrote selfish. He put selfishness, low emotional intelligence or IQ, anger or substance abuse, and then 5 emotional instability. Okay, so selfishness. I'll just run through them again, right? Selfishness, again, kind of runs contrary to that selflessness of the agape, but someone who's like very focused on themselves. Like you'll listen to them talk for 30 minutes about themselves and their problems, and it's like me, right? um, Low emotional intelligence. If you kind of approach someone with a problem or a question, um, they don't they don't they don't quite understand. Like they're not very understanding, I guess is one way of putting it, right? Um, Anger of substance abuse. If they're like, substance abuse is pretty easy. I guess you can say like, are they addicted to drugs? Are they like alcoholics? Um, and what's it called? Someone who easily loses their temper, stuff like that. Emotional instability is kind of an interesting one because it's sort of like, sort of similar to the anger, but maybe like instead of crying or instead of yelling at you, they're crying, right? Um, I definitely had this happen to me multiple times where I was, in a relationship with one of these women. I'll just leave it anonymous. And, there was like a simple favor that they asked, and I was, for good reasons, I think, unable to fulfill that favor. Um, and it caused like a big drama. It was big spiraling, kind of uncomfortable, sad, crying, anger, like all these things. Like, and you know, just red flag. That's just hard. It's hard to deal with, right? That's hard to be with. That kind of situation is very difficult. So again, kind of those like red flags. Okay. Um, Story time. This one. Okay. Story time. About this one. Now, this is 2022. I had just turned 30 years old. Um, this person was younger than me. She was 23 at the time, I think. So she was kind of barely out of college. Um, and this is an interesting case because if I were to kind of look at this relationship if I were to look back at this through the lens of the four loves and the things I just was sharing, um, I would kind of, what's it called? I would I don't have like an immediate answer to like what happened here. Um, Basically, as the relationship was deepening, there were kind of new things shared about each other, and there was one thing that I shared with her that ended up causing her a lot of distress. And even though she kind of told me, no, no, it's not because of X, Y, or Z, like I still care. It's not about that. Um, like she broke up with me like several weeks, like several days, like a day later or something like that. So it was like, okay. I mean, it's hard not to kind of think there's a cause and effect there. So what happened with her? If I were to kind of look at these buckets, right? I mean, I think it's sort of that red flag number two, the low emotional IQ. Um, Sort of not really knowing, having the awareness or maturity to know um, how certain things might affect her, right? So, like, thinking that something's not a big deal and that it is, right? For herself rather, and to some extent for me too, right? I'm not really kind of having the understanding, the bandwidth to be understanding, I could say, I guess you can say, for like what someone else might have experienced in the past, right? So, I mean, this could have been like a big red flag for me personally, if she hadn't kind of self-selected the situation and just kind of escaped or rejected, anyways. um, so yeah, I would say that that's uh, yeah. I think I think it's combined also with the fact of there was a little, let's see, what was it? I mean, I think it's combined a little bit with the fact of emotional instability, right? Like, um, people are very concerned with safety these days, right? And I think there's a valid uh, desire for safety. And like, don't get me wrong about that, but I think people conflate safety with like discomfort, or sorry, lack of safety with discomfort. And it's okay. I understand. Like, granted, that's hard, but I also think that like a grown, mature adult human is able to discern these things. Someone who's able to discern whether if I say something like, "Hey, I feel that you did X, that when you did X, I felt X while when you did Y, and I would like to ask you to please do Z." That this is not like a personal attack. It's me kind of standing up for my feelings and my emotions, which are valid, labeling what's going on with you, and making a clear, kind of simple request. This is like those kinds of things are not personal attacks, I would say. I think there's ways to kind of disagree about things which are damaging. Um, but there's also ways to disagree that are not damaging, that don't hurt the other person in a meaningful way, and they don't hurt the relationship at all either, right? And so, actually, I think that's one of the other points that I think I'm getting a call. That's another point that this guy made in the talk that I thought was I think is very important. And I think, I mean, as we're kind of winding down here, I think it's a good place to end, which is that um, you want to find someone who can love well. You want to find someone who doesn't have red flags, or actually, hold on, two things, because I think with the thing with the red flags is you're never going to find anyone who's perfect, right? That's You're not perfect. They're not perfect. You're together. You're not perfect. Like, there's going to be problems. There's going to be situations that arise. It's not a problem. It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of when. Um, but I think there's two points that he made around these sorts of difficulties that are maybe more natural or normal. One, um, are these things that are livable? Can you live with this defect for someone with that someone has for the rest of your life, or for a long time, for that matter, right? Um, does every time you have a meal with them, they do something that drives you up the wall like a little bit more? Like, okay, first time on the first date, you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. Second time, you're like, oh, what's that? Third time, you're like, ooh, that was annoying. Fourth time, it just, you get the point. It gets worse and worse and worse. There's things like that that I think people can't help, sometimes, right? For whatever reason, the way they were brought up, or situation, or life. Um, okay, cool. So the what was I going to say? Can you live with those defects? I think I would argue that some of these red flags kind of go beyond the category of defect. They're of a different order of category. They're not like it's not like it's not like drinking or something explicitly, right? I think there's a material difference between someone who is an alcoholic and someone who likes to drink sometimes, right? Maybe one could be a defect. There's like a defect of, okay, I like to drink a little bit too much, perhaps. But then I think there is a categorical shift. There's a difference between someone who likes to drink, to someone who has like a chemical dependence, is like alcoholic. Like, this person has a real issue, like a real problem. Okay, that's a red flag. We're not talking about those necessarily. I think we're talking more about the imperfections of someone's being, person, that kind of thing. Um, anyways, okay, so um, the imperfections of someone's being. It's like a weird way of saying things. Okay, so the other point that he made, and I'll wrap up on this because I'm starting to kind of get silly here. The other point was, oh my gosh, I keep looking at my notes. Does this person know how to fight fair? Okay, so I think this gets back to that point of like, hey, someone who, um, I mean, you can kind of consider it a defect of the fallen of the world as it is today, where you're going to have disagreements about something. You're not going to be seeing eye to eye 100% on everything all the time, right? Um, and I think this kind of point that he made was basically getting at this idea that when those things happen, when I want X and you want Y, um, and we have a disagreement about it, what happens? Do either of us, one or both of us, kind of go in a direction in the conversation or argument that is hurtful to the other person or to the relationship? And I think those are kind of two different things, right? You need to kind of make a distinction between those two. There's a difference between um, you as another person in a relationship and then the relationship itself. Um, and I can't think of a great example of that right now, but I think that third thing, like it's you, the other person, and there's a third thing, which is that relationship. So when you kind of have a disagreement, when you're fighting, are there rules? Is it fair? Is there some kind of restraint for frustration or anger, if there is any? Um, do things are you malicious towards each other, like trying to wound the other person? I mean, those things are, I mean, I think also kind of are similar to that kind of red flag stuff, but kind of go beyond it as well. Um, but anyways, um, avoiding blame, criticism, criticism, harshness, sarcasm, shutting down, defensiveness. So, anyways, okay. Um, okay, I see one person has joined, but I don't know if they can hear. I don't know if that's Aaron, but that's basically my speech. If anyone, mystery person, oh, mystery, two people. Who is it? They might not declare themselves, which is fine. I was just wrapping up, but here we are on Valentine's Day, celebrating love. And I guess I'll wrap up by saying some final thoughts about my experience as being a guy with a disability or someone with an arm limb difference situation. Um, I'm just like the person I had just stood with my mouth. Did you husband at is that terms of this kind of get lost of being loved, which is kind of get at the or if it's incorrect then it's you I was kind of fine desire but go for me abilities me with the and uh, internet here. Right, everyone, it'll be, uh, but yeah, uh, okay, and, who, relative, it, speaking, and, and I would clear like was exact levels. Okay, with you physically when this it was alright. Points for that. We negatives for the thing. I think I'd wear hopefully that love not a when you think when you are pretending their ability beings getting distracted like this kind of cycle. Yes, it is right. Like, I might not can go craft their facility if I will and had their um if internal about come agree yourself who can really go active. And if you're thinking that you're going to, you're not communicative is right. I'm mean, like confidence, not so far ridiculous belief. Then I use your great um help them make again anyone who can feel document what I'm very interesting one I from my last say is eventually for with this recent like women very kind of during attracted women and I saw kind of a thing which is if you go in women track attractive is from attractive things you've depended on desirable woman's dependent on is like that. Like, like the reason I think he's because women care less, if not what a man rather in general. This is a things being real on those things handed on one's lips are like emotions are more attractive. I think that's me disadvantage respecting those negative lies inside me otherwise clear as if that's her possibility. She's kinda lower than you, but less deep physical package. So I harder you hide looks. This is not a man put down invalid women out. It is, I think there are men excuse the abilities. His still dry, kind of non-physical sorry, soup like under better. Hope you found gonna go silent. You found good luck. Godspeed.